Hey all, this is Siege, and today I want to go over another area of the game you may be neglecting. But if you've hit 400 and even tier 12 in your gear, this might be where you want to head next if you're looking for something to do in Destiny. Now this is building your character to be as effective as possible. Although I think you'll get the gist of what I'm doing here and can apply it to all of your characters, for today's purposes I'm going to go over the Titan character class and its 3 subclasses. Now, bear with me. Most of the stuff is going to be off the cuff versus scripted because I wanted to give you my honest thoughts on how I build my character for different scenarios in the game. But before I do that, I want you to ask yourself a few questions if you're looking to start building your character for maximum effectiveness. First question is this: what primary, secondary, and heavy weapon type are you most comfortable with? The second question you want to ask yourself is, have you actually had a real chance to play with each of the guns in the game? Because if you haven't, then you might be missing out on the gun type that actually suits you the best. Now the final question is, do you play with all the subclasses when you play Destiny, or do you predominantly stick with one? That's going to be pretty important as far as trying to maximize your character, because obviously different situations in the game call for different subclasses, and if you only run one predominantly, you're going to have to maximize your character for effectiveness with just one subclass, which can be done, just makes it a little more difficult in certain areas. So I want to show you the Titan Striker subclass that I like to use. We're running the Striker subclass with Unstoppable, Transfusion, Overload, Shockwave, and Lightning Grenades. There's actually a reason why I do that. When I run my Striker Titan, there's a couple different exotics that I like to use. Before I even get into the exotics, the main thing I want to go over is how I'm building my character. For me, auto rifles are the most comfortable weapon in the game. They're the most forgiving, and for my playstyle, they suit me the best. So, does that mean that because the meta isn't auto rifles right now that I should stop playing with them? Absolutely not. If you're good with an auto rifle, you can still be good in the Crucible. You just have to basically accept the certain limitations that that weapon has and play around them. Now I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit right here. Now, as I mentioned, I like auto rifles, so my character is going to be built for auto rifles. Let me show you what I mean. The gauntlets I predominantly use have increased reload speed of auto rifles, and typically the chest pieces that I like to get have auto rifle ammo on them. These are the ones that I'll particularly be looking for in almost every piece of chest armor that I get. As you can see here, I'm also running a sniper rifle, so in this particular situation, I have the option with this chest piece of running increased sniper rifle ammunition or increased auto rifle ammunition. It's up to me. So they complement the 2 weapons that I'm using right now. So you're going to get increased ammo, you're going to get increased reload speed. For the primary, that's very important, and you can use every bit of it, especially in PvP. My gauntlets increase the amount of machine gun ammunition I can carry. So I'm using the Baron's Ambition machine gun right now, so I'm going to be able to get more ammunition out of that. I've mentioned this in other Xur videos that the 2 perks that I look for predominantly in every single helmet that I get are Infusion, replenishes health which each time you pick up an Orb of Light, or better already, Shield Start recovery immediately after Orb pickup. Now there's a couple others that you can find in the game that might suit your playstyle better or worse, but for me, health is always a major thing. So at any particular point, if I can pick up health from getting an orb that's laying around, or if I can get my shields regenerated, that's always going to benefit me. And that works in PvP and PvE. So it's kind of one of those perks that you can limit the number of armor pieces that you're actually having to keep by consolidating what you really need that's going to work for all of your subclasses. Kind of moving on a little bit further here, one of the other things that I'm doing is, because I'm using the Arc subclass, just so happens that this chest piece has Arc armor, increased armor when using an Arc-based subclass. So I'm also getting a little bit of an additional armor boost there just from using that. Next is when I add my exotic into the mix. And every time I use an exotic, I try to put it there with a purpose. I use the Thagamizers because it gives me Amplify. Kills with Storm Fist significantly reduce the cooldown of Fist of Havoc. When you use that in conjunction with Overload, reduced Storm Fist cooldown, hits with Storm Fist have a chance to immediately reset its cooldown. you now have a possibility, at least, of charging your super extremely fast, especially if you are in an area with, say, a lot of ads in a PvE environment. I also like to use the Armamentarium because of how powerful the lightning grenades are with the Striker subclass. Using the Armamentarium gives me that second grenade. And what's nice about this exotic is it's not based on an element. I have two of them just because, as I've showed you before, I like to actually run armor that works with the subclass that I'm using. So this has arc armor on it. This one has void armor on it. It doesn't really matter what you use. You could be using a sniper rifle, fusion rifle, doesn't matter. It's going to give you increased ammo. Same thing for the heavy. It can be a machine gun, rocket launcher, whatever you want. This is a really good exotic. Periodically, you will see me run the Insurmountable Skull Fort. Because the Skull Fort gives you improved transfusion, kills with Storm Fist immediately trigger health regeneration, respawn with full melee energy, gain a second melee charge. I can then flip transfusion, because I'm getting it with the Skull Fort, to Aftershocks or Headstrong, depending on what I want. Now, if I want that increased agility to be able to sprint faster because the Titan is so kind of clunky to begin with, I can have that here, and I can still get my transfusion. If I want to increase the duration of the pulse grenade or the lightning grenade, or even aftermath, I can do that. Moving on to the Sunbreaker subclass, what I typically use, first and foremost, is Cauterize. Enemies brought down by your fire regenerate your health. This works for anything that you kill with your fire. That's grenades, that's your melee, that's the hammers. So this is extremely important, in my opinion. Next, I use Flame Seeker, and I'll show you why in a second. Thermal Vent, because I like to create that sunspot. It'll stay for a little while, and incoming enemies, waves of enemies, you'll actually get 2 and 3 kills out of that just from one melee kill. Not to mention in the Crucible, it still leaves a rather large pyre of flame sitting right there. I like to flip it up between these three. It really depends on what you're doing. Finally, I've been using the Thermite Grenade a lot. I like the fact that although it doesn't do as much damage, it stays for a lot longer and it allows for territory control. Of course, the Fusion Grenade's probably the best for PvP, just because if you stick somebody with it, it's a guaranteed kill. And the Incendiary Grenade is nice. It just, to me, is the least of the three. Now, moving on to what we typically use. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the Immolation Fists. And the reason why is because you get explosive pyre with these. Why that's important is because having Flame Seeker actually allows your hammers to move a little bit to track your enemies. Explosive pyre is really nice because when you do hit something, they explode and then that damage moves on to somebody else. So in my opinion, out of all the exotics I could be using, I feel like these two together are probably the most potent combination. And it just so happens that you can have that if you get this particular exotic. So when I'm running Sunbreaker, this is what I'm running. I was lucky enough, and you can see that I have increased reload speed with auto rifles, and I also have increased melee attack speed. This particular chest piece has solar armor, increased armor when using a solar-based subclass. So again, I'm getting that increased armor just from using a piece of gear that works with my subclass. Alright, finally guys, we have our Void subclass. What I typically like to run is one of 3 things. The first is the Helm of Saint 14. The Helm of Saint 14 blinds enemies who enter into it, which is huge. Especially if things are rushing at you and you're using your defender bubble. The fact that they can't see and basically can't attack you makes the bubble a very comfortable place to be in pretty much any situation. Now, my particular role, I was lucky enough to get Infusion. Replenishes health each time you pick up an Orb of Light, so you can see how that's working in my favor. The other exotic I like to use, as I mentioned before, is the Armamentarium. I have this one with increased armor when using a Void-based subclass, mainly because I don't have an offensive super, so getting an additional offensive capability like another grenade definitely helps when you're using your Void subclass with the Titan. Finally, the last thing I like to use is the Glass House. That gives you Bathed in Light, Blessing of Light, and Weapons of Light last longer. So, I'll either use Blessing of Light or Weapons of Light depending on the situation. And then I will also use Illuminated. Increases the benefits granted by Blessing of Light and Weapons of Light. So now, from the subclass node that I'm using, in conjunction with the exotic helmet, I now have Blessing or Weapons of Light that's longer and stronger than it usually is. Just to kind of give you an example too, You'll notice that the chest piece that I moved over to also has increased armor when using a void-based subclass and an increased amount of auto rifle. So you guys should get to at least see a little bit of the thought process that goes into trying to maximize your character. When you go forward playing the game at this point, if you're still looking for something to do, if you guys are still interested in hitting some strikes up or something, or leveling your character up on patrols, using bounties, no matter what it is, if you haven't done this already, this can give you something to do to start to get your character to perform at its very best. So if you're going into the Crucible, you're going to have as good a chance as possible to be the very best player you can be. If you're going into PvE of any situation, such as a raid or even new content, you're most likely going to be under light when you walk into that, come April, if nothing else. Having every other advantage at your arsenal and thinking the game like this is going to increase the amount of fun that you have, because we are just going to be more effective. Your games are going to come out better. You're going to win more. And you're probably going to have a lot better KD in the Crucible. The stuff's there for you to use. It's up to you to go out and kind of grind for it. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please like and share it. I'd like to do a similar video for the Warlock and Hunter if you're interested in that. So keep an eye out for it. Also, if you're new to the channel, please click that subscribe button and turn notifications on to be alerted of all upcoming Destiny and gaming content from the channel. I really appreciate the support, everybody. At any rate, have a wonderful day and take care all. Bye.